Welcome to Rethinking Value Propositions with Human-Centered Design. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Jen Sweet. I'll be helping out with today's webinar. We hope you get a lot of value out of this session and enjoy the content, whether you're watching live or on demand. Today we have two exciting speakers, Nilufer Erdebil, founder and CEO of Spring 2 Innovation. Nilufer is a TEDx Ottawa speaker and the author of the international best-selling book, Future Proofing by Design. She has dedicated her career to helping organizations achieve remarkable advancements through design thinking principles. And Dr. Stoyan Tanev, Associate Professor in the Technology Innovation Management Program at Carleton University's Sprott School of Business. Dr. Tanev brings a truly multidisciplinary background with degrees spanning physics, technology management, and even theology. He has taught and researched across Europe and Canada, focusing on digital innovation, entrepreneurship, artificial intelligence, design thinking, and emerging technologies. Currently, his work centers on the adaptation and entrepreneurial opportunities of quantum technologies, and he's developing a course specifically for that for the business and engineering students. With that, I'm excited to pass it over to Nilufer and Stoyan.
Thanks so much, Jen, and welcome everybody, and welcome Stoyan. Super excited to have you here with us today. You and I met probably 2-3 years ago and have been meeting and collaborating on and off over that time. And I always love our conversations. I always walk away with new thoughts and new thinking. And so I'm really excited to have you on our webinar. Before we get started, I wanted to ask our audience, and thanks for those that have actually been writing their name and where they're coming in from into the chat. That helps us get to know each other a little bit better. I wanted to pop up a quiz for you guys, or not a quiz, but a poll, just to get a little bit of an understanding of where you're coming from for value proposition. And so we were wondering if you use the value proposition narrative in your organization. Yes, no, or not sure what value proposition is. And Jen, can you start the poll? Yeah, so do you use the value proposition narrative in your organization? Yes, no, or not sure what value proposition is. Give folks about 20 more seconds to finish up on that poll, and then we'll be able to show you the results, as well as it's going to help us direct some of the conversation and questions. And as always, feel free to write in the chat, but if you have questions, we also have a Q&A box that you can write your questions at, and we're going to save 10 to 15 minutes at the end for Q&A as well. But if it comes up in conversation too, I'll try to integrate it in the conversation so that we get your questions answered. I know Stoyan and I spend a lot of time chatting with one another, so sometimes we get carried away too. So I'll make sure I come back and look at that chat. All right, and so I'm going to share the results that we have now. Or did you already share them? Oh no, we're sharing them. Awesome.
We're sharing them.
So 32% said yes, they do use the value proposition narrative. 19% said they don't, and we have 48% that don't know as much about the value proposition. And so this is going to be a great event for those that are using it, for those that aren't using it. And if you're not sure, buckle up, because we are going to talk a lot about value proposition. So thank you again, Stoyan, for coming and chatting with us. In terms of the topics that we're going to try to cover is we're going to first off kickstart with what is value proposition, the working definition, where it belongs, especially if you know the business model or you're in strategy, how we can use it for aligning multiple stakeholder perspectives. Why does value proposition development need a design thinking perspective? And then for framing innovation approaches, and then the double value proposition of design thinking firms. There's a lot in there, and so we'll just get kick-started right away. I am going to stop sharing, and Stoyan, maybe I will get you to share. And as you're starting that up, the first question, of course, that I'm going to ask you is, what is a value proposition, and maybe where should people consider using value proposition in their organizations? And then eventually we'll get to how.
Hey, thank you very much. It's a pleasure yeah, to talk on this topic. Let me try to do full screen. Yeah, I hope everybody sees well. Yeah, so for me, this topic has an existential aspect in the sense that I think it's existential for organizations and for companies. It's existential for my job as a professor because the program that I'm part of, the Technology Innovation Management program at Carleton University, is a program for professionals focusing on new opportunities, early stage companies, new value propositions, and we'll see what that means and so on. So for us, this is key aspect of how our students and ourselves, we can help companies to create new value, to enhance the value they create for their potential customers and for themselves and for their partners. So it's a key conversation in our everyday life. But what's interesting, it is we use it a lot in academia, so to say, but it's not an academic term. It's a practitioner. It was introduced by practitioners. And just to give you a sense of other similar terms, for example, value proposition, business model, business opportunity, even. When you talk to people, even entrepreneurs, technology experts, government managers, you can see different things about those three different concepts that are supposed to be part of the everyday life of a company. So this is why whenever I hear those things, I just ask people, tell me what you mean, because sometimes people may focus on one thing or another. But I picked up some definitions here. I prepared some slides that I think will help the conversation. So I may be jumping between the slides, but the starting is a good one. So it's a strategic tool that is used by a company to communicate how it aims to provide value to customers. So there are three keywords here: strategy, communication, and provide, deliver. So it is not just saying what we are going to deliver to customers, but how actually we're going to provide it. So it's a very pragmatically driven term. So it was introduced, as I said, by practitioners. And one of those practitioners, not the one who introduced it, but who commented after this, Frederick Webster, he was so bold to say a customer value proposition should be the firm's single most important organizing principle, considering that it is crucial to the value creation process with significant performance implications. This basically means that if an organization is able to articulate properly their value proposition, they will get rewarded by customer loyalty, more revenue, or so on and so on. Yes, I said it's practitioners.
Yeah.
It was, yeah.
If we could go back to that last slide, and so there's a lot of information in that slide. So basically, in any type of an organization, you should be starting out first with the value proposition, understanding what value you're providing to your end users, whether it's customers or if it's a public sector, it's to your citizens or people within the organization.
Yes, so this is how I understand it should be the single most organizing principle, because the value proposition is the reason for an organization to exist. If it's a company, we're saying we are in this business, and in this business or this business sector, this is what we are trying to do. We're trying to bring a new perspective, or being more customer oriented, or provide the benefits of one particular technology in service of something. So in this sense, it defines the overall vision of an organization about why it is there and what it should do. This is why I really believe it's a concept between the strategy and the business model, more the operational perspective of a company. So it is a link. Basically, you articulate how you believe your organization could be valuable. I like this word, valuable. And then you have to articulate how you are going to do that, which could be related to the business model or to the operations, and so on and so on.
Love it. Thank you.
Yeah. So just to go back to the practitioner aspect, 1988, by Lanning and Michaels from McKinsey. And they focused, when they introduced it, it was particularly to describe how an organization will deliver value, not just a marketing promise and so on and so on. Yeah, so here is Lanning is still alive. So he had an interview in the Industrial Marketing Management Journal. It's a very readable article, and he gives a short story of how he came up with the concept in 1983, even though they published in the McKinsey Journal the concept later on. But he basically says so I'll just read a little bit. One common and important way in which the concept of value proposition is not used strategically is that businesses often formulate them as promises to customers, hoping to influence attitudes and behavior, but then fail to take promises seriously. The strategic point of a value proposition should be to deliver it. Choose, then both provide it, and of course, communicate it. So this says that, after the introduction, what he's kind of sad to see is that many people use it as a communication device of promises, but not as a way of substantiating how exactly this will be delivered, so that people could get confident about what they're going to get.
Yeah.
And the example is, yeah.
And you and I were chatting about some examples too that might help relay this information to our audience too, because a lot of the time organizations have a vision and they promise something, but the whole organization doesn't align around it and they don't deliver on it. And that's when issues start to happen for the customers, for the customer relationships, and sometimes even safety.
Yeah, and the example he gave, a very prominent example of Boeing, which, the planes, and safety is a key aspect of a plane. And he refers to them with statements from 2019, where they say, we know lives depend on the work we do. And our teams embrace that responsibility with a deep sense of commitment every day. Safety is at the core of who we are. And then he gives the story of how exactly they did exactly the opposite, having a couple of planes falling because they were trying to go ahead particular ways of addressing a particular issue. So it's a relatively long story, but the example is very specific, and it's from the one who introduced the concept, trying to emphasize that it's important to mean what you say and then actually deliver it. And then this discrepancy between what you promise and what you actually deliver is something that puts people away from a potential business. Yeah. So then I can think of some little bit more kind of a not strict definition, but more kind of an explicit definition, if you want me.
No, this is really good. I wonder, because you want to start out with a value proposition, it's kind of your vision, and you actually want to deliver on that vision, why do so many organizations forget to prioritize their value proposition or treat it like an afterthought?
This is what's in my mind to share. Do this exercise. Look at a company that you know, an organization that you are related to. Go to their website and read and try to understand what they're actually doing. Especially for startups, it's a very, very challenging exercise. People are trying to do the best they could in terms of articulating what is the value, what is their differentiation and so on, but ultimately ends up with performance attributes, things, big words, which are good, but then you have to get more specific about, we would like to transform the business sector by delivering the best in class, something like this, and then ultimately I'm very, very often have a hard time to understand what is it that they actually offer. The value proposition is a very logical narrative, as we will see later on. So I can move now with a more formal definition, which is a strategic tool facilitating communication of organizations' ability to share resources and offer a superior value package to targeted customers. This is a compact definition, which brings in the resources aspect, but let's try to decipher it. So what does this definition say, actually? The value package, a superior value package, which should include, before we start there, the value proposition, it always starts is turns around an offer. We can call a market offer, and this is a broader term than the product or the service. The product is part of the offer, but there is something to be offered, and which means there is someone who offers. There's someone offers something, and this something is offered to someone. If one of those things is not there, there is no kind of a logical link of the communication. So we always have in mind a particular offer, and we always have someone in mind. This someone in mind is the target, what we call the target customer. And the target customer is a very specific target group. Remember that in marketing, segmentation means trying to interpret a large group of people as with one face, with a type of person. Now, the segmentation developed later on into the persona analysis, where we literally try to look at a face, at a person, and try to relate a group of people behind it. But the point is, even if we speak about large group of people as a market, we still, this is someone then we can talk to, someone with very specific characteristics. The reason I'm saying this is that when we say the value package should articulate the key benefits of the offer to the particular target group, those benefits are relevant to the specific target group. You may have a second target group where the benefits may be slightly different, or the combination of benefits could be different. So offer, target group, target customer, key benefits to the target customer articulated, costs, associated costs and cost drivers. All those are components: target customer, key benefits, cost driver, the drivers, differentiation from competitive offerings. An offer is always comparative to existing alternatives, even when the target group has nothing to use. Even if they don't have a product, they still deal somehow with the problem that they're dealing with. So all those are very specific things, showing who the target customer is, trying to provide a characteristic, articulating the key benefits that will be relevant to this specific target group, the same for the cost, and then differentiation from competitive offerings. This sounds very easy, but this means identifying the competitors, identifying their offerings, and trying to relate your offer to these competitive offerings. This is a very explicit work. You can have competitor one, competitor two, product one, product two. It is that specific. This is not an ideation thing. It is a very particular identification. Then a value proposition should articulate how those benefits will be delivered before, during, and after usage, including the functional and the experience aspect of the product. The functional is more to the parameters of the offer, but the experiential aspects are related to the value in use. So to say, what's happening when people use in the process of using.
And so if I can ask you a quick clarifying question. So I think our audience knows personas really well from design thinking. And so different groups are brought together and are fictionalized through a character, basically based on their behavior. For value proposition, do you have a different value proposition for each type of client and so each type of a persona?
I think so. Not I think so. It should be, because the key benefit is always relative to the particular target group. You may have two target groups. Imagine a coffee shop in a university. Professors and staff are one type of customer. Students are a completely different type, even though they may go on the same line. And you can see clear difference about what people from one group appreciate and what the other group appreciates. But they should be differentiated, and it is it's a very cruel exercise, because you need to really remove bias and say, what is so specific about those people? What makes them different? And this has to be articulated in the benefits. So it's not an easy exercise, and this is probably why people tend to talk over it instead of getting one by one the key elements and trying to articulate it. And this why it also shows the strategic aspect. Going through all this, you already have a clear picture of whom you are targeting. Are you actually able to deliver? You may realize that some of your target groups are unreachable, probably. All this is good knowledge. Yeah. But the third point I just want to make, in addition to the offer, this definition includes resources provided by the company to the customer or to whoever the target group is to co-create value. The example I have here is IKEA. You know what IKEA does, what it offers. It offers also a design tool. We just went through a renovation in a small kitchen. My wife did everything in advance by using IKEA's kitchen design tool, where you can put the size of your kitchen, all the angles, all the dimensions, and then you can just pick things from the available offer products of IKEA, and it will tell you if it fits with what goes with what, and you can do the preliminary design and have a very good idea what you're looking at. And then after you are done, you click calculate, and it gives you the price, and you can order online.
Yeah.
So, of course, you can also go to IKEA and use one of their advisors, and they're very nice. They'll go through it, they'll check if those things are really available. They may provide recommendations about particular things. But this is an example. It's not the product. This is not what they sell. However, they provide to people that are able enough to use the tool. And we have been using this tool for the last 5 years, which is extremely helpful. But this is an example, a perfect example, how a resource is provided for the target group to co-create value, because it gives you an idea. You know in advance what can be done. If you're wandering between two type of shelves, you can go and check the colors, look at the dimensions, have a feel, in the store, and so on and so on. So in this sense, but this is it's a very dynamic parameter of the value proposition, because it allows for customers to customize, to make the offer their own. Yeah. And
I love
the last
that.
point, briefly, just putting all the pieces together in a way that they resonate with the particular group.
And would you be able to provide maybe a public sector example as well to some of
By
our
the way,
audience?
in the design, when we start discussing how design helps articulating strong value propositions, the example that I'm using from one of the authors that I'm following, Keith Dorst, the book that I'm referring to, almost all his examples are in the public sector. So one of the examples was a city like Ottawa. He's talking about, I think, Amsterdam, no, Eindhoven, where they have an issue that the city is long. And think about Ottawa, Canada. The kids in Canada, they want to go to downtown. And in same as Eindhoven, they have a bike road, and many kids go by bicycles and come back in the evening. Especially girls, the parents of the girls are very sensitive, because they need to drive all this thing by bicycle, but also they need to go downtown, and some of the pubs have have had bad reputation because some accidents happening in there. So the sense of risk of the parents for their daughters was something that became an issue in Eindhoven, and how people started addressing what the key problem was and what actually the city could offer to address this issue in terms of the communication of the issues, the measures that were taken, the different stakeholders involved, and so on and so on. So in this sense, this is one of the things that we can talk at the end. But there are also other examples of particular public-driven, public domain examples. I could refer to one of my examples. My first company, I came to Canada in '96 December. And in 97 November, I got my first job after my postdoc. And it was a company which is still around, very close to my home here, 5 kilometers away, called OptiWave. OptiWave is developing design tools, optical photonics design tools. The telecom in 97 was growing, the industry was growing up until it reached the 2001-2, and then it collapsed. But OptiWave was this type of business, photonics design tools. They call them photonics design automation tools. There are 15 companies in the world. There are not that many. And they're pretty much doing similar things because you use numerical methods to create simulation engines for people to simulate how light will propagate through photonics devices. And when you start, I was the research engineer, so to say. And of a company of 12 people, the one who develops is the sales. If somebody's interested in your product, you take the call and you start explaining what it does. And people ask you, how is this better than these other guys in the States? And then you say, okay, I know what I'm offering. How do I speak about why is this better than the alternative? So you need to spend the time to learn what actually the competitors do. And then even when you do, you may actually realize that, well, numerically wise, there is not much to claim. Everybody does the best they could, and the algorithms are known to everyone. And if you're smart enough, you'll be able to get the best out of the available algorithms. And it took me months until I realized that actually what we were offering was the visualization capabilities. Everybody offering something, but focusing a lot on the calculations, the output numbers. We were offering a possibility to look at the different part of the device, have like a small eye that could go and see how exactly light happens there, how does it diffracts, and so on and so on. But it took me months, I was the developer, to realize what actually the key benefit was. And this particular benefit was able to address something very specific. We were able to address younger engineers who did not have that much experience with similar type of analysis and design, because they were able to go and see for themselves inside of the device what was going on. So suddenly this became an offer that was saying, well, we do all those things that other people do. However, we have the capacity for younger people to get into the design because we offer those superior visualization.
That's a great example, Stoyan. It makes me think, whose responsibility is it to create the value proposition? Because you did that as an engineer, but in organizations or in projects, who would that be?
Amazing question and very important question. Because it might happen that in a larger organization, you have the people that are really the developers, that are very keen on coming up with this new stuff. But then without executive management support, this could just stay untapped, so to say, and it could actually create frustration in the innovators, in the people that are really coming with those things, because they see that something that's highly valuable and they know well what the competition does, but it gets unused because of the next delay, the new hiring cycle, because of layoffs or whatever it is, So since this is related to strategy, executive management should be driving this process of reinvention, continuous re-evaluation of the value proposition, because in today's world, with the coming of digital, AI, quantum, the world is changing every couple of months. As we have seen this with generative AI 5 years ago, it was exactly 5 years ago, and today is part of everything. So much that I'm just amazed how it happens. And if you let this go and you don't incorporate it somehow in the process, you are behind.
Yeah. So strategy for the organization needs value proposition, and then each project or product also needs value proposition. Is that correct?
The value proposition of the particular products and services has to be strategically shaped, to fit the overall direction of the organization, also to fit the development logic of the products and the services. So here we come to this nice word that we're using, alignment. There are multiple alignments in an organization between the value proposition and the target group, between the value proposition as part of the strategy, value proposition as part of the business model. Because once you know what exactly makes you different, special, and desired by your target customers, then you have to deliver. And this is where the business model comes. And here is one of the points that I wanted to make. Actually, it comes really nice.
I love it.
Here is the business model comes. The traditional, it's not the perfect tool, but it's one of the good tools available now. That defines in the center of the business model canvas is the value proposition, in plural. We'll see why. Then you talk about partnerships, activities, resources, target groups, cost structure, and so on and so on. This is all good. However, this approach may force people to think that the value proposition is just one of the elements of the business model. It is one of the elements, but it's coming from a little bit from outside, from a strategic perspective. And in this sense, it is the center of aligning the rest of the elements of the business model. Here, I'll remind the point by Webster: the single most organizing principle of a business. So this picture should be used to demonstrate that, and not just to say, well, when you define your business model, you have to include also the value proposition. No, you use the value proposition to build a business model around it. So I think this is fundamental because it provides a logic of reflection. You have to focus on how you are different, why people will like you, what do you want to change. One example, Nokia now. Nokia is talking about quantum safe communications. Quantum safety in communications is still an ongoing concern. And Nokia feels, Nokia Ottawa, even the local guys, that they have to educate the sector. They still need to bring in the key. They have the product. People can choose it or choose something else. But they feel the responsibility to drive the sector to realize the benefits of quantum safety, especially in those early stages and so on and so on. But it shows how an organization identifies its role. They have it as a value proposition, but at the same time, they have to kind of not train, but inform the sector and educate the sector. How is this going to change the industry, and why it is important to have it, especially at this moment. So it's not just we have it here and you can choose it as one of the options of your network, but however, there is this additional strategic perspective, which obviously they share, but they try to excite, so to say, into the industry. So this is an example of how strategic it could be, not just for a particular organization, but actually for the entire sector.
I love that. And we're kind of skipping around. I know you've prepared a bunch of slides, but there's more questions that keep coming up. Could you chat a little bit about how value proposition helps or is part of aligning within organizations?
Okay, this brings another question that I already speak about. This point. So let's talk about alignment, and we already mentioned some of it. Well, I think that organizational focus on the value proposition is helpful to amplify the kind of the intensity of the efforts of an organization. It provides a kind of a logic around which you can develop capabilities and so on and so on. But so there is an alignment between the value proposition and the target group, for sure. There is an alignment between the value proposition and the overall direction of the company. But and here comes in the business model canvas, value proposition was in plural. This wasn't like that. They started using the value proposition in plural by 2013. I met Joster Valder several times, to 10 to 11, and he didn't have published the value proposition canvas book at this particular time, and in his canvas value proposition was in singular. But actually, every single company has more than one value proposition, and this is key. Of course, they have a value proposition to customers. However, there are other value propositions. First, you may have two target groups, two target customers. So they change not only the value proposition, but eventually the business model. However, the other types of value propositions are, for example, investors. Investors invest in a company for a given reason. They expect something in return. Value propositions are always reciprocal. People invest something and they expect something back. But investors are a very different stakeholder. Employees are a very different stakeholder, and a company also has a value proposition to their employees. I referred to the telecom industry in 2000s. I remember what was happening. The city was boiling. Companies were hiring people from the next door company. Salaries improved, increased from 2.5 times over 5 years. Just because the city was photonics telecom, optical telecom driven, many new companies and companies started offering to their employees a lot more in terms of money, stock options, and so on and so on. So in this sense, in moments like this, you can really see how the employees are actually a key stakeholder, which requires a particular value proposition. People choose, especially in a growing sector, people choose a particular company for a reason. This is a third type. Your partners, they also come to work with you because of a value proposition. You have to offer them a particular way. And here is this graph here, that there are always two types, at least two types. One is the product, the service that is targeting the customers. And the second is how do you target your partners? Usually, the business model looks like an offer to your partners because the business models shows them how they can make money by working with you. So in this sense, we have to keep those multiple layers of alignment. And here comes a term that some people use, that when you align along the different value propositions, most often the core aligning principle is the customer value proposition. Yeah. You try to make sure because the customer is the one who funds the system. If they find the offer attractive enough, they start paying, and so all the value chain could get paid, so that they could continue delivering the value. But at the same time, you have all these other partners, and this is why the term, there is a special term called incentive alignment, aligning the incentives. People are part of your value chain for a particular reason. They have something to offer and they expect something in return. And if this is not enough for them, they'll not be fully motivated. You may get delays in delivery. You may not count on a longer term relationship, and so on and so on. So in this sense, if we are talking about alignment, yes, it has to be driven by the alignment between what the value chain offers to customers. However, there are all the other alignments. And here where we can talk about the value blueprint.
Yeah. And so two questions for you. One of them came up in the chat. Do customers or partners participate in the exercise of formulating the value proposition? That's the first question, and then I'll save my second one.
Yes, this is a very good question because the value proposition is not just what came to my mind, it's a dialogical reciprocity. This term is coming from a philosophy, but it's very nicely applying here. Dialogical reciprocity. So, of course, you try different things out, especially in a business-to-business context. This is a real conversation going on until you reach an agreement about what is going to be the exchange mechanism. With customers also, using all the marketing knowledge, processes, insights that you can get is absolutely valuable. Comparing your offer to competitors, learning a lot about your competitor customers, what they are happy with, and so on. So all this is valuable. There could be multiple iterations until you figure out how is this going to be. But it is a dialogue. It is a dialogue, and the value of digital tools today is that you can actually learn a lot by engaging people in a digital way, so that you can learn a lot about what they are really interested in.
Yeah. So yes, customers and partners should be participating in the exercise of formulating the value proposition. And this brings me back to design thinking as well as deeper clarity, where you always want your customers, and if possible, your customers' customers, to help you in identifying what their challenges are, as well as doing some ideation, prototyping, and testing. The next question that brings to mind is, how does design thinking help teams define, refine, and deliver more meaningful value propositions?
Okay, before we move this, just the last point about
Yeah.
this value blueprint. So if we speak about the multiplicity of value propositions, that different type of stakeholders, there is a particular approach that enables organizations to think this way, and this is to move the shift from talking about value proposition to talk about value blueprint, which means practically identify the key players of your value chain, make the logical links between them, and see who delivers what do you expect as a resource, as an activity, and analyze the relationships in a way that they are optimized so that you deliver, and this is again very practical exercise. Partners, suppliers, complementors, and so on, and try to make a logical link. I have two examples here that I will not go through, comparing Sony Reader versus Amazon Kindle. The book is called The Wide Lens by Ron Abner. It's a very understandable book, and the reference is here. I strongly recommend it for very nice examples of very different industries, but it gives you a sense of how to think in an ecosystem way. Okay, now design. I told you I'm teaching those things, and we work with clients that we discuss value propositions almost 20 years now, 15 probably, 15 plus, I'd say. And in one moment, somewhere in 2010, I realized that when we speak about value propositions, you have to get as specific, as explicit as possible about the value dimensions of what you do. I was at that time in Denmark, one of the universities in Denmark, and there was a design pathway for the program that I was part of. So I was trying to find a perspective that will be attractive to engineers, how engineers could adopt design practices. So I started studying all this phenomenon of particular group of professionals trying to adopt design practices without being design professionals, didn't spend to study design or do a PhD in design or so on and so on. And there was a movement in the world, somewhere in the 2000s, people got excited about adopting design thinking into engineering, business, and so on. After the initial excitement, there was a collapse. People found it too easy. Well, you just talk about the problem and then you talk about the solution and everything, which became a complete disaster until people start realizing that they need to really get serious about that. And the level of seriousness increased somewhere in the 2015. Every single large consulting firm acquired a design thinking firm, a design company, because they found it relevant for their customers, but also they were using this act of acquisition as a message to their customers that we are serious about you, we care about you, and this is why we adopt design practices. So this created a second generation of interest in the domain. And one of this articulation is the work by Kees Torst, a guy from Netherlands, but who teaches he's a practitioner too in Australia. So he talks about this framing innovation approach. But his point is this, that you can adopt design practices by design professionals and it will be definitely helpful. But his point was, where exactly design practices are most valuable? And the answer was that design practices, professional design practices, are most valuable in problems that do not have obvious solutions. Those are not just customer problems. You can use traditional problem solving techniques to think, and a traditional technique would be, for example, the McKinsey approach to project management. Define the problem, structure it, key elements, prioritize, analyze, synthesize, communicate. This is an amazing technique when you have a well-scoped, well-defined problem and you need to act on the basis of all resources. However, according to Dorst, he says the problem today is with the problems. Today's problems are not the same as before. Now we have open, complex, dynamic, and network problems, which makes that people did not find a solution. There is no example to look at so that you can kind of translate some of the insights. There were multiple attempts that were unsuccessful. There are multiple stakeholders that disagree on what the potential action should be. They're actually probably in conflict, and this is part of the problem, and so on and so on. But here is how he says, design thinking is good where really there is a challenging problem that there is no obvious solution. And here he suggests an approach that I will try to summarize here. Those steps on the right: problem, paradox, context, field, team, frame, and so on and so on. His approach is based on the idea of framing. So if the typical reasoning in problem solving is that we know what we have, we know the existing relationships, and we're trying to come with a particular outcome that will be valuable to anyone. And if you miss some of those, if you don't know the what, you can figure out what the what will be so that you could get the outcome with the existing how, or so on and so on. The real challenge is, and those special problems are, when you don't know, you know what you need to achieve, but you have no idea, nothing worked before, and you need to invent both the how and the what. And the framing is make an assumption about the how so that you can figure out a potential what and see if this will be acceptable for the multiple stakeholders. So in this sense, a frame is a proposal. If you have people, let me give an example. One of the examples that I have is during COVID, the kids that are 3, 4, 5, 6 years old were offered online school. And they have to be there on school. Those people cannot concentrate on a computer for more than 10 minutes or 15, 20.
5.
So, and then the father and the mother, who are supposed to be at work, just need to stay with them so that they could actually stay in front of the computer and sing the songs or guess the letters and so on and so on. The parents cannot do this all the time, so they ask the grandparents to come during COVID from another house to help them deal with the kids. At the same time, the parents have a work. They have meetings, and while they have the professional meeting, their daughter is staying on here and smiling on everyone in the boardroom. So people in your boss completely understands that you cannot be fully dedicated to your work because you have 2 kids at home. Because you need to leave your job in order to play with them or to let them watch their online teachers. Teachers have fallen in a situation where for the first time they are being monitored. Everybody in the house is monitoring what the teacher does. So suddenly people start asking, why do you do this? Why this song? I don't like this song. I would like this another song. So in this sense, completely new roles that are mixing up what is actually going on. And in this sense, it's, what is the solution here? Solution for whom? The parents have one issue that they cannot fully dedicate their efforts to work. The children are struggling because they cannot concentrate and they create trouble for everybody around them. The teachers see that this does not work, but they don't have another choice. the grandparents are trying to help, but they have own stuff, So this is an example of how you can see multiple people involved in how a decision potentially could be done and so. So here's an example of a frame is to make a suggestion. How about we do it this way? And then you can see how people react to this particular proposal and eventually use the level of interest to further develop the solution in a way that it is could be acceptable to everyone. So, yeah.
I love that aspect of it.
So
And
the framing is a way to look at things so that they could engage all stakeholders in a conversation that could result in a potential solution, which includes, at the end, shaping a value proposition to all of the stakeholders so that they could see. The value proposition means that they are ready to invest something and they are expecting particular benefits from this. So ultimately, this process is a kind of explicitly includes, after you decouple the initial problem, try to understand what the issues are, even the unsaid, the hidden tensions between the stakeholders, and invent, using the insight, the feedback, kind of propose a particular perspective that will engage with others. Some people say that the success of a frame is proportional to the degree of engagement it will generate amongst stakeholders.
I love that aspect of it. Time is flying by, Stoyan. We didn't get through probably 80% of the questions. That being said, if folks have questions, feel free to write them in the chat, or if you haven't had a chance to think of a question but think of one later, feel free to email us at info@spring2innovation. One of the things that I want to ask really briefly is we chatted as we were prepping for this about the double benefits of value proposition and design thinking to the teams that actually participate in these sessions. Could you chat a little bit about this as folks are maybe typing in their questions?
Yeah. So this is something that I kind of crystallized in my head in the last 2-3 years when I used the founder research that I found out that actually when a design project, there is a design project driven by the company or by an external organization, it obviously targets a particular design outcome. Could be a new process, could be a new product, could be a new way of doing things in an organization. But however, there is a parallel outcome. And this parallel outcome is the transformation of the team. If for such problems that we spoke about, open, complex, dynamic, and network, the team has no idea at the beginning what the solution is. The solution comes after dialogizing with all stakeholders and using particular design techniques to identify the directions that could be valuable to most of the stakeholders. So in this sense, for a particular design outcome to happen, the team needs to get transformed. And then I realized that a company like yours, like Spring2Innovation, you actually have the double outcome. One is that you help companies to achieve what they're trying to achieve, but also during this process, actually the company's acquiring the mindset. Yeah. So ideally, I was saying that ideally one day you should be happy seeing one of your clients after 2 or 3 times helping them, they'll come to you and say, thank you very much, we know now how to do it. This should be the most visible sign of success. So when people say, we don't need you now because we learned from you. And then you just need to find that other clients that are in this process that they would like to do design, achieve design outcomes, but also transform their people and competencies into something that will be valuable to them afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely right. And that's when we know we've done our job, is after 2, 3, 4 engagements with an organization, they have a core team of people that know how to do this and then are able to do it without us. Sometimes people move around to other organizations and then bring us in to kickstart a new team. But at the end of the day, it's a team transformation, that mindset shift that happens quite a bit. Stoyan, this has been a phenomenal conversation. As always, I love talking with you. I love hearing your insights on things. And I feel like I have a lot more questions to ask. I feel like we could do a 3-hour class easily on this topic and still have way more to talk about. Wanted to thank you for coming out. And for folks that are interested in the topic of value proposition or design thinking, feel free to reach out to me or to info@spring2innovation. You had Stoyan's contact information earlier as well too, or we can link you up with Stoyan if you want. If you want to find out more about design thinking, we have a book called Future Proofing by Design, Creating Better Services and Teams in the Public Sector Through Design Thinking. And as always, if you want to reach out, ask about some facilitation services around value proposition, alignment, design thinking, um, customer understanding, customer experience, feel free to do so. Otherwise, have a fantastic day, and we will be chatting at our next webinar coming up in another month. And for those that are interested, you will be getting a link to the recording, and so stay tuned for that in the next week. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.